It is crucial that you are not missing out on exercise. Taking 6 weeks off of resistance training everywhere in your body is not a good idea, and your body will definitely decrease in health. So let's say your ankle's bothering you, your foot or something. Your knees, your hips, your abdominals, your core, your shoulders, your elbows, your hands and wrists, your neck, they all are still great viable options to do exercise, and keeping these areas healthy, strong, conditioned is crucial for not only just the health of those joints staying healthy, but will also help you recover from this ankle injury.
Welcome to the Exercise is Health podcast, where we're talking about exercise, health, and the interconnectedness of the two. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we will be coming to you every single week from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Exercise is Health podcast. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we are coming to you from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg in Schaumburg, Illinois. Now, at Muscle Activation Schaumburg, we believe your health is your most valuable asset. Your health is one of the biggest influencers of the quality and quantity of time that you have. And while there are many aspects of health, our expertise is exercise. Exercise has been proven time and again to not only improve your health, but also increase your longevity and improve your quality of life. And if you are looking for a guided way to work out on your own using minimal equipment from the comfort of your own home, then you need to check out the MAS at-home workout program. This is a 75-day video guided program that includes over 100 workouts, from resistance training to cardio workouts, mobility workshops, and even recovery workouts, so you can make sure that you stay feeling well and can work out day after day. So if this is of interest to you, go to homeworkout.matschaumburg.com to learn more about this and download your copy now. Now today, what we are talking about is an exercise-related topic, and it is one that we find come up, I think, a little bit too frequently with a number of people, and that's this idea of exercising, or rather not exercising, when you're injured. What we find is a lot of people, when they sustain some type of injury, they're just like, well, I can't work out. I can't work out, and I'm not going to work out, and not until this injury is healed will I be working out. And the challenge with that is that can actually create a lot of issues in addition to the injury that's already there. So we want to talk with you about why you need to keep working out even when you're injured.
Charlie, I was actually making a social media post about this. And by the way, if you don't follow us on Facebook and Instagram, check us out. Give us a follow. But anyways, this idea that a lot of people believe that when you're injured, I should not be working out. And what I was thinking was, like if you know self-help people or like therapy people, counselors, they have this idea of like self-depleting thoughts, things like I'm worthless, or I'm not good enough, or I will never make enough money. Those are like thoughts that don't help you progress. They don't help you become a better person or get yourself out of whatever situation you're in. And I was thinking, like a self-depleting or body-depleting thought that people have about exercise is that when I'm injured, I shouldn't work out. And we have to learn how to delete this thought, because when you're injured, it's a certain state that your body is in, or I guess a joint or an area is in. But it is definitely not a reason to not work out. And in fact, working out, of course, we'll talk about, the how and the why and stuff like that. But working out will probably help you recover from this injury much faster than if you didn't work out. So it is so important that we change this idea that when you're injured, you should not work out, because when you're injured, you actually should be working out. Yes, there are nuances and things you need to know about working out when you're injured, but it's not a just not work out. And even if you haven't been cleared for exercise, I bet whoever told you you are not cleared from exercise, whether that's your doctor or your physical therapist, you could talk to them and say, well, is it just my ankle that's not cleared for exercise? Or is it my whole body because I only have an ankle issue? Or is it just my hip that's not cleared for exercise? Or is it my whole body? Because chances are they'll say, well, it's just the hip. Because a lot of times, especially a physical therapist or a doctor, they're not really guiding you through exercise. So if they clear you for exercise, then they are kind of held responsible or liable if you were to injure the area that you are, or injure further the area that you have injured. But if you ask them for details, most likely, and we do this all the time with clients, most likely they will say, you're not cleared for exercise in this certain spot or in this area. And exercise everywhere else will actually help you recover.
Yeah, Julie, that's such a great point. So, to highlight that again, we are not saying that you need to go over your doctor's head and say, okay, well, you know what? My doctor said I shouldn't work out, so I actually do need to work out, so I'm going to disregard their advice. What we're hoping to do from this conversation today is at least give you a basis or a starting point to start asking questions of your doctor if you're told that you shouldn't be exercising, and give you some information or give you some ammo to then kind of explore that a little bit further, kind of guide you with questions that you should be asking so you can get a better understanding of what is meant by, well, you shouldn't be exercising. Like Julie said, is it just for the one area that needs to heal, or is it for your entire body? And are there things that you can actually be doing to maintain some level of physical activity? Because as we'll discuss, that's really important for your overall health and the overall function of your body.
So before we get into some details about how to do this, I do want to highlight, if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably listened to our podcast before, or maybe this is your first time, who knows? But that exercise is crucial to your health. Like daily movement, daily exercise, weekly resistance training is crucial for the health and function of your muscles, your joints, many systems in your body, including how your brain is functioning. So it is crucial that you are not missing out on exercise. So for example, a lot of injuries, like the standard answer of like, how long will this injury take to heal, is like 6 weeks. Taking 6 weeks off of resistance training everywhere in your body is not a good idea, and your body will definitely decrease in health. So here's the deal. Say your ankle's bothering you, your foot or something. Your knees, your hips, your abdominals, your core, your shoulders, your elbows, your hands and wrists, your neck, they all are still great viable options to do exercise, and keeping these areas healthy, strong, conditioned is crucial for not only just the health of those joints staying healthy through your recovery of your ankle injury or whatever you have going on, but will also help you recover from this ankle injury. Because as we've talked about many podcasts in the past, especially a lot of our MAT podcasts, many joints have common muscles. And so that means that, a muscle that crosses your ankle might also cross your knee and, in other joints as well. But keeping these muscles active and healthy will only aid in your recovery, because it might not be like a direct quote unquote treatment or improvement in that joint, but it will keep support to that joint, because all joints kind of intermingle. So keeping the other joints that aren't being affected strong, healthy, functional, and conditioned will really help to keep stress off the injured joint that's trying to heal.
Yeah, this is a really important point, because a lot of times what we see is when an area is going through the healing process, all the other areas end up going through the deconditioning process. And so while one area we're focused on getting better, all the other areas end up getting worse. And what this leads to is when people do start to resume activity, then all the other areas of their body have become deconditioned, and now they're actually more at risk for injuring those areas because they've taken time off to let the one area heal. So that's really, really important. If you are needing to take time off of an area, make sure that the other areas of your body stay active, stay working well, and continue to be challenged so they don't get worse, okay? So that's a really important point from a joint health perspective and from a muscle health perspective. From a metabolic health perspective, understand that within 3 days of inactivity, you're already starting to have negative changes in cardiac function, negative changes in LDL to HDL ratio, and starting to become more insulin resistant, which is a precursor to becoming full-blown type 2 diabetic within just 3 days of inactivity. Now, let's say you're not going full-blown inactive, but you're going from moderately active to less active. Okay, let's say you're going from about 6,000 steps a day, which isn't a ton, but is an okay amount, to 1,500 steps a day, which is like hardly any at all. Within just a few weeks of that, you start to see those same negative metabolic changes. So going from some activity to less activity kind of lengthens out the timeline, but you still see those negative changes, and just not over the course of a few days, you see it over the course of a few weeks. So like Julie said, if your time off is 6 weeks, well, now you're coming back and you are going to be markedly less healthy from a metabolic perspective. You're going to be more resistant to your insulin, meaning you're more diabetic now. You have a less functional or a less healthy cardiovascular system, and your LDL to HDL ratios are going to be worse, which again, it can be a precursor to heart disease, or at least is a marker to say, okay, well, hey, what's going on with your cardiovascular health? So that just happens, within 3 weeks of going from, moderate activity to low levels of activity. That's a big deal. That's a really, really big deal. So if you're thinking, oh yeah, you know what, I just need a few weeks to let this ankle heal or let my knee heal or whatever. Well, if you're not doing anything over that 3-week time, understand that you are becoming less healthy, which means when you come back to physical activity, there's going to be a lot more work to do to just get you back to baseline, not just from the joint perspective, but from a metabolic and overall health perspective as well.
And I like that you bring that up, just getting back to baseline. I will say, and this is no problem if you're in this boat, but many people exercise just to be at baseline, right? And if you like to use exercise in that manner, that's completely fine. You're not trying to be like an elite athlete or whatever. But that means that you have to be protective over that baseline. That means that baseline can slip away pretty quickly because you don't have much bufferage above baseline. So many people operate at that level and they're happy with it, and that's cool. I'm happy that you're there, but you also have to be very protective of it, because slipping below that baseline, I think we slip faster and faster the older we get, or the more, poor health markers that we have. But two others that happen as well when we take a break from exercise and when we are injured, and I'm going to share a little story about this, is, so number one, Charlie mentioned, if you go from like moderate exercise in your daily routine to now light, if you are someone that tends to gain weight easily, you probably start gaining some weight. And I don't know about you, I gain weight easily, and it is harder to get off weight than it is to put it on. So not to mention now you're more deconditioned. So if you're going 6 weeks or even 3 weeks without exercising, you've probably gained a few pounds. You're also now more deconditioned, so it's going to be more difficult to get those pounds off. And in addition, now there's more weight on whatever joint is trying to heal. So that's something to keep in mind. And then the biggest one I think is the toughest for people, and we see this regardless of if it's injury or vacation or holidays, but is getting out of your workout routine. So often when any client of ours misses a week of exercise, it usually quickly turns into 2 or 3 weeks. It is usually not a 1 week type thing unless they go ahead and schedule the following week. So be mindful that we as humans are creatures of habit. We like to be in a routine, and when you mess up that routine, whether it's justified or not justified, it's hard to get back in the routine. So I really encourage you, even if you're having to exercise differently, great, keep exercising differently. I don't care, but keep exercising while you're injured. So while we were talking about this, I'm thinking about a quick story. When I was in college, I actually broke my right ankle. I broke my medial malleolus. So if you look at your ankle, there's like a lump on the inside and a lump on the outside. I broke the inside one off. And so I had to have surgery to kind of put that back up together. And then I also had a high ankle sprain. So it's a pretty serious ankle injury. And I was in a casted boot for quite a while. I remember in college, I didn't really think that much about exercise, except that I liked it and it was something to do. And in college, I really only did a few activities, which was eat, sleep, go to class, study, and work out. So I really didn't have that much on my plate. So out of probably boredom, I would still show up to the gym with my boot. I actually was eventually was known as the girl that walked in with her boot. I took it off. I would put my tennis shoe on. I mean, I didn't do anything crazy with my foot, when I was there. Nothing that would be like, oh no, you should put your boot back on. But then I'd hobble over to the weights and sit my butt down and do the weights. And I would work out every single day doing weight training because I couldn't do cardio because my foot was out of service, like biking, ellipticaling, running, doing stairs. All the stuff I used to do was really out of the question. But weight training wasn't out of the question. I did not enjoy it as much as cardio, but I had to do something, again, out of boredom. And what else was I going to do with my time? It was part of my routine. And what else am I going to do? So anyways, I remember I made so many friends because people were like, hey, you're the girl that goes to the gym, takes her boot off and then puts her tennis shoe on and works out. I'm like, yeah, that's me. And I remember I didn't know much about exercise, but I would just experiment. I would find every way that I could work out that actually didn't I didn't think influenced my ankle at all. But looking back at that experience now, remember I told you guys I'm a weight gainer. So if I hadn't done that, I probably would have gained a good 10 pounds because I was in this boot thingy for probably 3 months. It was a long time. It was way more than the normal 6 weeks because high ankle sprains are worse than breaking a bone. Anyways, I probably would have gained some serious weight. I would have lost a lot of strength. So getting back to my cardio activities that I did and my resistance training that I normally did, just not as frequently because I was mixing in cardio, would have been so much harder because I would have been completely out of shape. And, I had crutches for a while, so that was keeping my upper body in shape, but it wasn't any of the full range of motion. It wasn't using all my muscle groups. So looking back, that was probably the smartest thing I did. And given the activities that I did, I probably could have left my boot on, but for some reason I felt like people would think it was weird, if I worked out with a boot. But I mean, people clearly thought it was weird that I would go there and take it off. So whatever, it doesn't matter what other people think. But I wish we would see that more, right? It's okay, well, my ankle was out of service, but my knees were in service, my hips were good, my trunk was good, my upper body, I could work all those areas. And so I did. And I think that really, really aided in my recovery. And that was probably the biggest injury I ever had. But I think that I dealt with it the best. I also would swim, so that would be a good cardio that didn't really involve my feet. So anyways, that was my quick story, and I did it without having intention behind it, but looking back again, I think it was really the best decision that I made, which was just showing up, doing what I could that wasn't influencing the healing of my ankle in a negative way at all.
Yeah, I love that story because, again, it just highlights the importance of being consistent with your exercise. I think a lot of times when we see people that are trying to work out through an injury, that's the thing that gets highlighted is they're trying to come back too soon. They're trying to push it too hard or anything like that, as opposed to exercising with an injury. It's okay, well, I have this injury. I'm not trying to push through it, but I'm going to still keep the rest of my body healthy, challenge the rest of my body, and try to progress the rest of my body. So I think that's an awesome example of that. A couple of things that you brought up the idea of kind of losing conditioning. And a lot of times what in the world does this mean? Okay. Does it mean that, I become out of shape? I think that's, from a cardiovascular standpoint, from an endurance standpoint, I think that is one way to look at that. And, you got to ask yourself, okay, well, how quickly does this happen? So I want to throw a little bit of science at you right now. And part of what can determine maybe how in shape somebody is or how well conditioned somebody is are the expression of certain types of enzymes within their muscles. Okay, and specifically, I'm going to talk about something called LDH or lactate dehydrogenase. All right, and there are 5 different versions of this enzyme, and one version is produced by muscles, which is kind of the least conditioned version. And then you have all the way up to the version that's produced by the heart. Okay. And that's kind of the most conditioned version. All right. Well, what's really interesting is as you start to exercise and, as you start to work out harder, you can actually change the enzymes that are being produced within your muscles. Your muscles will always produce the muscle version, but you can start to produce more of the heart version as well, or kind of variations of that. Well, the thing is these enzymes have about a 48 hours or so half-life, all right? Which means you're constantly producing the muscle version or the deconditioned version. And you start to work out harder and harder. You start to produce more of the better conditioned version, the heart version or variation of that. Well, if you stop exercising, after about 48 hours, those enzymes that you were producing that were allowing you to be in a little bit better condition, they start to go away because, your enzymes need to be replaced. They have a half-life of around 48 hours or so. Well, that means that you take a couple of days off of exercise, you're going to be less conditioned than you were 2 days prior. That's a big deal. So you think about, well, how quickly does this happen? It happens within a couple of days. It's one thing to take a day off. It's another thing to take 3 weeks off. It's another thing completely to take 6 weeks off. And if that's what you're planning on doing, you're going to come back markedly less conditioned, which means, again, getting back this idea of kind of back to baseline, you're going to have to spend a lot more time kind of getting back to where you were. So if you can find things to keep you physically active in the meantime, that's going to be really important as far as maintaining your level of strength and level of physical conditioning. The other thing that I want to talk about are the brain changes that happen with inactivity, okay? It is well documented that your brain volume will increase with physical activity and your brain will function better with physical activity. But the reverse is also true. With sedentary lifestyles, your brain actually starts to shrink. All right. And this is a big deal. Yes, it's a big deal from a cognition standpoint, from a memory standpoint. But to your earlier point, Julie, of getting out of your workout routine, it's actually a really big deal for that as well. Because one area of our brain called the prefrontal cortex, okay, one of its functions is called executive function. And there are a lot of different aspects of executive function, but one thing that's often attributed to executive function is like how on task somebody can be. And what has been shown is that exercise improves executive function, okay, which allows people to continue to be more on task, which actually allows them to have greater adherence to their exercise program, okay? What this means is the more you work out, the more likely you are to continue to work out because it becomes easier to work out because your brain is better able to stay on task. Well, you stop working out, you fall out of that habit. Not only does your brain shrink, but you become less likely to continue the habit of exercise because the areas of the brain that deal with that aren't getting the stimulus to grow, aren't getting the stimulus to improve. And so it becomes more difficult to get back in the habit of exercise. So just going back to a couple of earlier points you made, Julie, about one, losing conditioning, and two, then falling out of the habit of exercise. It's not just a week that's taken off. It's 3 weeks, it's 6 weeks, and then it becomes increasingly more difficult to get back into exercise on a regular basis. There's good science to back up those claims. And so I just wanted to highlight that. And we're not just sitting here just kind of throwing stuff out from a, practicality or, motivational perspective, but this is actually what the data shows. So there's legitimacy behind these claims that are being made.
Great. So from a lot of the aspects we've brought up in terms of not missing out on your workouts, because the rest of your body literally needs it. You need to be exercising for your body to be healthy. And when one area is out of service or can't be worked at a certain time, that's okay. It will heal because that's what our bodies do. They adapt to their environment, heals. But the rest of our body, again, cannot start decreasing health because there is one area that is needing time to heal. So briefly, we just want to go over a few exercise tips for some application. If you're listening to this, you're like, well, I'm kind of injured. So this would apply to you, these tips, if you are feeling like you tweaked an area that does not need medical attention and you don't need to go to physical therapy for, or an area that needed medical attention, needed physical therapy. You've now been cleared for exercise in that area. So now we just talked about the rest of your body. Now we're talking about the injured area. So you need to make sure you are cleared for exercise for your medical doctor or your physical therapist. Again, we are not allowed to do that for you, and you do need that clearance to be taking our advice. So anyways, again, this is if you don't need medical attention or you've already had medical attention, because sometimes, you get out of PT or you get out of whatever therapy you're doing or surgery, and you feel like, I've been cleared for exercise, but I'm just really not there yet with my hip or my knee or whatever. So, okay. So first things first, if you go see someone like Charlie or I, we'll probably be the most intricate, detail-oriented type people to help guide you back into exercise. So if you want one-on-one support, definitely reach out to us. Either we can do that for you or we can link you up with some of our colleagues. You're going to want to look for a resistance training specialist personal trainer or a muscle activation techniques specialist in your area. So one of those or the combo of those will probably be the most powerful piece. But if you are going to try to attempt this on your own, here are some principles. The first principle is to be mindful of your range of motion that you're going to move your joint in. So normally when we think about exercise, we think about moving. So for example, like your knee, it bends and it straightens, bends, straightens, bends, straightens. So when you first start, let's say you had a knee injury, when you first start trying to strengthen or exercise your knee, you want to think about watching the range of motion that you can go in. And the biggest way to monitor your range of motion is to only do range of motion that you can attain all by yourself. So for example, Charlie and I were sitting while we're recording this. So if you're sitting, what you can do is your knees are probably starting bent. You can take your heel and try to pull it, like bend it more and pull it up towards your butt. Eventually that bending stops. I mean, you could probably take your hand and grab it and pull it further. We're not talking about that range. We're talking about the range you can do all by yourself with nothing else touching that leg. And then if you're seated, you can also straighten your knee. And there becomes a point where your knee is going to stop straightening. And usually for most people, that's not all the way straight. It's going to be just shy of straight somewhere in there. Or if you have a pretty severe injury, it might be pretty not straight at all. And that is okay. So when you start resistance training, scooch back. So you know how far you can bend. You know how far you can straighten with no influence. When you start resistance training, you're going to start really light. And I recommend that you definitely don't go outside of that range that you just showed yourself. And number 2, you move really slowly with whatever weight you have. Because when you move slowly, you're really eliminating a lot of momentum. And a lot of times momentum is the thing that will make your joint move further than it would have by itself. So the best thing you can do when you're starting to resistance train is to become aware of the range of motion that joint can do all by itself without you shoving it, pushing it, a machine pushing it, or anything like that. And then respect that range. And respect that range by not going past it. And also then when you start to move with that range, you stop when your body is telling you to stop, meaning you move slowly, and wherever you can't move slowly in that manner anymore, that's where the range is done.
Now, the second thing that we suggest doing is keeping your exercise muscle centric. All right. What does this mean? It means while you're exercising, you're focusing on your muscles. While you are thinking about what you're going to do for your exercise, it's all about squeezing your muscles. It's all about how can the exercise I'm going to do improve the function of my muscles. All right. So this kind of muscle centric exercise is a really big concept. Why? Because by keeping your focus on your muscles, you're going to be less likely to overdo it. All right. You're going to be less likely to push through something that doesn't feel good, because you're going to be able to detect when it doesn't feel good sooner, okay? You're going to be able to notice things come up in your body that are telling you, yeah, you know what? Right now my body says I'm done. And that's a really critical aspect of making sure that you are able to exercise not only when you're healthy, but especially when you are less than healthy, when you are less than 100%. Because if you don't listen to those little cues, those are the things that turn into your body telling you loudly, hey, you know what we did yesterday is way too much. And that's why you're feeling really achy and beat up and sore today. And when you are already injured or trying to heal from an injury, adding additional achiness, adding additional soreness to that is not what you're wanting to do. So keep your exercises muscle centric, meaning focus on squeezing your muscles while you're doing your exercise, not on trying to lift the weights or not on trying to get in more reps.
Our last tip is to stay consistent with these exercises. As you can see, sometimes when you are coming out of an injury, you have to go pretty darn light, which means that the stimulus isn't all that much, but it might be as much as that area can handle. So it's important that you just continue to build the stimulus or build the challenges that you put on your certain areas that are recovering from injury. I think Charlie did bring up a good point that if you're feeling sore and achy, that's not a good sign when it comes to building muscles. When we build muscle, we want to be challenging the muscle shy of being sore and achy. And I know that's like a common thing that we hear, like, oh, if you're building muscle, you should feel achy and sore because that means it's going to break down and rebuild. But actually, that breaking down process will actually increase inflammation in the area. And what you need to build muscle happens even if you're challenging the muscle, but you're not getting it to that sore and achy part. So especially when you're recovering from injury, you don't want to feel sore and achy because that is just an increased amount of inflammation. And that area already is doing just fine with inflammation. So let's not add to the pot there. So definitely make sure you are consistent, which means that maybe you're doing it a couple times a week where you are challenging the area, but also listening to your body. So if you're feeling that that area is just really tired, either change the intensity and cut back so that you can do it more frequently or change your frequency.
Now, if you enjoyed this conversation and you want to get more conversations like this, make sure to subscribe to this podcast, as well as request to join the Exercise for Life Method group on Facebook. We have conversations every Thursday, live broadcasts every Thursday at 12 p.m. Central Time, and we have different discussions like this. So if you're enjoying this and you would like more of it, make sure to subscribe and request to join the Exercise for Life Method group on Facebook. In addition, if you are looking for a way to exercise on your own that incorporates the principles that we just discussed and you've been cleared for regular exercise, go to homeworkout.matschaumburg.com. There you can download our at-home workout program. That is a 75-day video guided program that includes over 100 workouts, from resistance training to cardio to mobility workshops, as well as recovery days, all designed to improve the health and function of your body. So again, if you want to learn more about it and download your copy, go to homeworkout.matschaumburg.com. And while you're online, if you wouldn't mind, head on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. It helps people find this podcast when they're looking for information on exercise and when they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us that 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week.